round off with a few questions for everybody that's on here, and the self-reflective questions. But before that, I do that, I want to sort of suggest that the first rule of leadership or being a leader is that you have to do your job, and that job is to lead. And that is essentially it about being a leader. But then tying it back to what Carl was talking about earlier on, you have to have followers in order to be a leader. And if you don't have followers, then you're not a leader. So that, it's really vital that those 2 points there. And unlike some leadership so-called gurus, I don't dictate X, Y, or Z what I believe is a good leader. I like to ask questions, and I ask 7 questions. And the reason I ask 7 is because research suggests that, cognitively we can understand 7 chunks of information. So there's a trend in there. And from a military perspective, we used to have 7 questions around formulating a strategy. So I think it sort of rounds it off nicely. So the first question is a self-reflective question, self-awareness question, and it can be linked back to the work of Chris Argyris and Donald Schoen, 1978, about reflection in action. So we all understand reflection on action, which is after the fact of reflecting on what we've done after we've done it, and learning about the where we went well and where we didn't, to improve it for the next time. They suggested to be more present, and links back to their double loop learning methodology, for a leader or anybody to reflect in action. And so the first question I ask is, what do you do when you do what you do? Bit of a tongue twister, but what do you do when you do what you do? And so as a leader, whenever you're interacting with your environment and the people that you're leading, you will be having an effect. Even if you're just stood there observing, you become a part of the environment and therefore affect it. So as a leader, you need to understand what actions or what effect that your actions are having in the moment. And a prime example of this is having a conversation with somebody, understanding the effect of your body language, your presence, your tone, your pitch, the words that you're using, and the language that you're using, and reading the effect that is having instantaneously to the environment at the time. Understanding that feedback and then changing the way you're saying it, your presence, the tone, everything that I've just mentioned, in order to get the effect that you intended in the first place. So that's question number 1, is, as a leader, are you aware of the impact of your interactions? Excuse me. Moving on to question number 2, and Lee's already gone through it really, really well. But question number 2 is, what are your values? And they're not the values, like he said, we all have them stuck on the walls, or they're in the information pamphlets, or the preces of the courses or the universities or the organizations we're working at. It's not those. They're the values that you hold true to yourself. And if you're unsure of what these values are, ask the people around you and they will tell you, because you display in your actions and the things that you do and your behaviors. That is where we see your values come true. And it can be linked to the theory of values-based leadership. Okay, and the disparity sometimes between what people say and what people do, whether they walk their talk or they don't. So the question is basically, as a leader, do your values drive your leadership style? And how do you measure yourself, and to what standard? So that's question number 2, is what are your values? Question number 3, is really important for any organization. It's what do you do to promote a learning environment? The current crisis that we're all going through is going to be a massive research project for many years to come, as was the financial crash in 2008, 2009, as there's so many things before. Because the world is continuously changing. We live in a volatile, complex, unpredictable world. Okay, and so organizations have to react to world change in order to survive and thrive. Now, organizations are just a collection of people, so it's all about people change. Okay, and so organizations need to have to become a learning organization. So as a leader, what are you doing to help your people to become self-motivated, self-directed, and self-actualizing? Because if you can generate that in people, they'll be more motivated, in line with the vision of the organization and aligned to the values, if they've assessed it themselves and it's in congruence with it. Excuse me. And then inherently, the inherent effect of that is their performance will be far better than someone that is just directed to do X, Y, and Z. Because we're all people, and then if we're passionate about things and we take ownership of it, we are going to perform better rather than being told of what we have to do. So as a leader, question yourself, what are you doing to empower those around you? And what are you doing to ensure that your team not only survives, but goes on to thrive in whatever sphere that they're in? Question number 4, very much interlinked with question number 3, is what do you do to promote an innovation culture? I'm sure we've all heard the term of innovate or die, and it is absolutely true. And there's countless examples, but the one that I like to spring to mind is Kodak. I can't remember the year, but you can Google it, you can research it, and you might already know it. They were the first ones to trademark digital photography. They came up, it was their intellectual property, they copyrighted it, they trademarked it, they protected it. What they then did was leased it or licensed it out to other people to use. What they failed to do was innovate on their own ideas that they already had and actually implement it in their business strategy. So when the patent ran out, everybody just copied it and did it and did digital photography. And the story is there for everyone to read. So you have to innovate or die. And the people ties back to the theme throughout all my questions, is the people are the asset that you have. They're the only true value that any organization has, because it is the people that you have working with you and for you that will do the work enabled for you to be successful. So as a leader, what are you doing to develop your people? And a common mistake for organizations is they create innovation hubs. And what this does is it's a fantastic idea in theory, but in practice it's not so, because you create this innovation hub, you create a silo of innovation that is never allowed to interact with all the other parts of the organization. And you can't innovate in a silo without interacting with everybody else, because they won't learn and you won't learn from them. So question yourself, what are you doing to promote that innovation culture? Question number 5 is a quick and easy one. Are you aware of Parkinsons Law? And I won't get it verbatim, but the notion of Parkinson's Law is the world will fill your time with problems unless you fill it with your own priorities. And we all know that time is the only true value that we have in life. It's finite. It will run out at some point. So you have to guard it as a leader or as a person in general. Because if you don't, the world will fill it up for you. And I'm sure we've all got stories of where we've been through that. And it relates around the language where people within organizations have this horrible terminology of being busy. There's a difference between being busy and being productive. It's too easy to say that you're busy because you're not being sort of proactive with your time management. And that world is filling your time, or other people or your superiors are filling your time. So really guard that. So as a leader, you have to set the example. Okay, and question, what example are you setting to those around you in time management and priority management? Are you the one sending out those horrible late night emails, 9-10 o'clock at night, that suggest that it's okay to be in work at 9 and 10 o'clock at night, rather than being with your families or the people doing your personal development? So question number 6 is, how well do you listen? And I'm sure we've all been in a conversation where, as we're listening to what is being said, we're thinking about the answer already. We're already formulating the answer before the person's even finished. So that suggests we're not actually actively listening, using all of our senses that we have around us. Observing, listening, looking for the body language, listening to the pitch, the tone, allowing people to actually talk and get their perspective across to you. Whether you agree with it or not, stop, take a step back, open up and listen with the whole of your body. and then you will get a better understanding of the perspective that is being given to you from the person that is giving it. So as a leader, you have to question yourself, are you really listening, or are you hearing what you want to? Because the more we listen, the more inclined we are to learn. Final question then, the question number 7 is, what is your purpose? Okay, this is, why do you do what you do? Not as much of a tongue twister as the question number 1, but you have to find out what is the root cause of driving you to do what you do. What makes you get out of bed every morning when you don't want to? You want to take that extra 5-10 minutes, but what's driving you? What's that purpose every single day that drives you as a leader? And are they in congruence with your actions, in congruence with your purpose as well? And for you as a leader, and I think Lee touched on it as well, you have to reflect, or you have to figure it out yourself. Because if you understand it and you open up, you allow yourself to be vulnerable and share this with others, they will then understand you better and then will help to keep you on your path. And they will help you to strive to get the goals to where you need to be. So as a leader, you have to question yourself, is everybody else aware of my purpose and what we're trying to do here? And that's it for the questions. And that's, like I said at the start, the self-reflecting questions for you to ask, and the continuous improvement, because leadership is an emergent property. You just don't learn a leadership style and that's the end of it. You have to adapt and change based on the context and the environment that you're in. One final quick story that I learned very early on in my career. I always used to, in my military career, I used to look to chess as sort of the ideal way to be a good military leader, because it talks about strategy and everything like that. And whilst it's good for strategy, it's not very good for leadership, because you have to move the pieces physically around the board. So if you're not there, nothing really happens. And it wasn't until I heard the story, I think from General Stanley McChrystal, about leadership, leader being a gardener, where you plant the seeds, you create a safe environment for growth, you provide nutrients required, and you allow nature to be nurtured. And that is how you can be a good leader, allowing nature to take control and do what it needs to do in the environment you've helped to create. So as a leader, I implore you to go out and tend to your gardens with care and attention. Thank you very much.